are tasked with training the Taiwanese. And some of those troops, it appears, are on these two islands, Kinmen and Pengju, that are very close to the Chinese mainland. They're in effect between Taiwan and the Chinese mainland. And those troops are engaging, those American troops are engaging in training the Taiwanese.
And what are they? I mean, they're doing this under the nose and in the shadow of the mainland. What are they training the Taiwanese for? To interact with American troops should the mainland invade and a president of the United States be crazy enough to send American troops there to defend Taiwan in the face of the one China policy? I don't get this.
Well, I think what's going on here is we are sending a signal to the Chinese that we will defend Taiwan. I mean, this is a tripwire force. It's hard to figure out exactly what the numbers are. I would guess the number will be somewhere between 100 and 200 American troops, maybe a little larger, maybe a little smaller. But it's not a force that's going to be able to fend off a Chinese amphibious assault against the Taiwan Strait at some point down the road. What it's designed to do is serve as a tripwire and bring us into any war that breaks out over Taiwan.
Right, to be clear, by tripwire, you mean these people are sitting ducks, and if they are attacked, that's the American justification for sending massive numbers of troops there to retaliate against the attackers.
That's one way of looking at it, but I would put a slightly different spin on it. And I would argue that what the administration is doing is simply sending a signal to the Chinese that we are going to defend Taiwan. And therefore, you better not invade Taiwan because it will involve a great power war between the United States and China.
Well, how much longer is this going to go on? I mean, is this intentional provocation, Professor Mearsheimer?
The way you want to think about this is to ask yourself a simple question. You're dealing with a country, China, that is not a status quo power. It wants to take Taiwan back. It wants to turn the South China Sea into a giant Chinese lake. And it basically believes it should control the East China Sea and those small islands that the Japanese now control in the East China Sea. And do you, as an American, think we have a vested interest in preventing China from doing any of those things? Or do you think that we should just stand back and allow China to take Taiwan, to dominate the South China Sea, and to dominate the East China Sea? Where you come down on that question determines how you think about troops in Taiwan or American naval forces in the South China Sea or what have you.
Does China want to invade the United States or trade with the United States?
It absolutely does not want to invade the United States. But the question is, should the United States allow China to dominate Asia? Should the United States allow China to take Taiwan and to dominate the East China Sea and the South China Sea? You have to have an answer to that. And the same argument applies to past historical cases, like Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, Imperial Germany, and Imperial Japan. Do you think it mattered whether those countries dominated either Europe or Asia? In the past, we have decided that we cannot allow a Germany or a Japan or the Soviet Union to dominate one of those two regions. That's Asia or Europe. And that basic question is at play here with regard to East Asia and China today. If you don't believe that we should care whether China dominates Asia, then we shouldn't fight for Taiwan or for the South China Sea. But if you think otherwise, then you have to think about clever ways to deter China. China, it's very important to understand, is not a status quo power in East Asia. It's a revisionist power. It's the United States that wants to maintain the status quo in East Asia for obvious reasons. We're the top dog. The Chinese don't like the fact that we're the top dog in their backyard and they want to change that situation. Who can blame them? But we are bent on preventing them from doing that. Now, you could argue that we shouldn't care one way or the other. But if you do care, that explains a lot about what's going on in East Asia today.
Here's Deputy Secretary